Hi, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You're listening to Living the Wildlife, discussing all things related to vertebrate pest control as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Hi, everyone. Stephen Vantassel here, wildlife control consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Hey, glad to have you on board. I hope your week has gone well. As you can tell, we have a guest, and we'll get to her here shortly. But before we do that, do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. And if you have questions, comments, yes, even criticisms, you can definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. If you're wondering what is Living the Wildlife all about, well, we're about technical information, research-based information on all things related to vertebrate pest management. So that's what we want to do here. So we do get geeky as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. So we will get down into some weeds. We're into some new technology here today. So those of you that do bird work or are interested in bird work, this is something I've only learned perhaps, a month or two ago that I've learned about it. So we're really glad to have Sara Larson. She is the Senior Vice President of Sales for Symterra, and you can learn more at the company at the website gosymterra.com. That's GOSYMTERRA.com, gosymterra.com. She's going to talk about I'm going to let her describe it because I don't want to mischaracterize it. It's a different way of getting birds off of buildings. So, Miss Larson, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. So, how'd you get into this business?
Well, thanks for the great introduction,
Thank you.
Stephen. I appreciate you having me here first. So it's funny because I don't have a background whatsoever in bird control or pest control. My background is actually in shipping and logistics. But I think, as many in the industry, people don't get into this saying, hey, I want to be in pest control or bird control. It just kind of happens by chance. Same thing with me. I got into this because I saw this really unique and incredible opportunity to be a part of something new and different in the industry. And I've been on board with the company a little over 2 years. Our product has been on the market for about 3.5 years. And really, when I started, I was tasked with starting our international division of the company with a main focus in Europe. So we are based in Tucson, Arizona, and I spent a lot of time waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and working with clients across the globe. And
Wow.
really starting our business, like I said, out there. It was great in the beginning, got to travel, got to meet a lot of really interesting people. I can say now I have friends really all across the globe and not just here in the United States. And really what happened to me was that I fell in love with this. And not once in my life did I ever think that I would say that.
Wasn't on your high school
No,
yearbook plan, right?
no, not at
Okay.
all. No, I mean, that was not on my plans whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um, but I really fell in love with this. Like I said in the beginning, this is a unique opportunity. It's a unique product. And we really, to be a part of something to change the way that things are done was something that I thought was pretty cool.
Interesting. Yeah. So most of our audience is going to be primarily familiar with spikes,
Yeah.
netting, trapping, shooting. What is your product? How is your product different? Where is it in
Sure.
that space of keeping birds off of buildings? Where does it fit in that space?
Sure. So the Symterra system uses a completely different kind of technology. What we use is an electromagnetic signal. So for, like you said, all those geeks out there, all of us geeks actually, that think about the way that actually birds navigate, which when a bird navigates, your daytime birds, they use a protein in their retina and magnetite in their beaks primarily to navigate. They see things that you and I as humans don't see. And they use basically the Earth's magnetic grid to get from point A to point B. What our system does is it puts out an electromagnetic signal that deters the bird from ever landing on the structure that the system is placed on. So what we're doing is we're basically jamming the bird's own internal GPS before it ever even hits the system. Your birds that are larger, like pigeon size and larger, will see that disturbance from about, let's say, 15 to 40 feet out from what we can assume. Obviously, I can't go to a bird and say, hey, how far do you see that? Although I'd
Right.
really like to, I'll
Yeah.
admit. But we believe that they can see it from about 15 to 40 feet out, which gives them a visual deterrent prior to feeling the physical deterrent that they feel when they come within the signal range.
Okay.
I use a very simple explanation when I explain this. Think about if you're on an airplane and your pilot is trying to land, he doesn't know how far he is from the ground or how fast he's going. I'm going to bet that that pilot's not going to land the plane. And it's exactly the same thing with the bird. They physically cannot land on the structure where the signal is being emitted from. The really cool thing about this as well is that it is 100% humane. Now, like I said, I've worked internationally for quite some time, and I'm starting to see regulations change in terms of the way that we do pest control in general, specifically in bird control. I remember one of my very first clients that I ever had was a major university in Europe that came and sought us out and said, hey, look, we ended up we've used traditional methods for as long as I can remember, and unfortunately every student has one of these in their hands,
Right.
and there were some protected birds that got caught in a net,
Mhm.
and the students walked by with their videos and took videos and placed it all over social media.
Yep.
Social media was then picked up by the national news, and you can only imagine what happened from there.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So with that, they said, look, we need to move towards more humane solutions. We have to repair our image as well.
Right. Right.
And we really just need to do things in a better and a different way. So I've seen that. Like, we talk about traditional methods out there. Honestly, you'll hear me say, and many of my clients can attest because I've used this statement more times than I can count, is sometimes you have to throw the kitchen sink at it. I don't believe that there is one product out there that is the saving grace to everyone and
Okay.
to everything. Don't get me wrong. I love this product. I'm slightly biased,
Right.
obviously, but I'm able to look at this and say, look, hey, if you need to do something else over there and something else over there and use this over here, I'm a firm believer in that. But I do feel like things are changing in different areas.
Yeah. So let's explore that a little bit. So let me give you the scenario. What would be the perfect ideal
Sure.
situation for your product? And then let's move to where the
Absolutely.
product would be not the first choice or the best choice
Sure.
as you market it. So what would be the perfect job that you would say, boy, this the product is best for this
Easy.
particular site?
I'm going to say commercial rooftops.
Okay.
Those are really, really simple things to tackle with this system.
And
You're
why is that? What makes the commercial site so much better than another location?
Sure. With this system, it is placed in a linear fashion. So let's
Okay.
just say you have a flat rectangular commercial structure. I'll show you a couple pieces of it right here. But basically, all that gets installed are these supports and this wire. And let's say you're dealing with pigeons. All you do is run this system around the perimeter of the structure. It puts a barrier around it, and that's all you have to do. So when you're looking at those really, really simple, kind of quick in and out jobs, that's really the key to being able to do this and doing it in a quick and simple way is those types of projects.
So you're keeping those pigeons off of that ledge. Does it prevent pigeons from coming over and landing and staying in the middle, or pigeons want to go to the edge to look over the side anyways? How does that?
Great question. Yeah,
Yeah.
the way we lay this system out is based on the behavior of the bird.
Okay.
So with pigeons, many of us know that they like the edges of things. So they'll do
Right.
the perimeter, they'll do
Hmm.
high points, ridges, ledges, window sills, and that type of thing. So for this, when we're dealing with pigeons, we lay the system out on the structure according to that type of bird. When we talk about the center and the middle of these types of structures, that's mainly for when we're dealing with gulls. So
Okay.
if I was looking at that same structure for a gull, and then you had a gull problem there, we would do the perimeter because I
Yeah.
still want that first line of defense,
Right.
essentially. But we know they like a little more space to land. They like to land in the center of things. And the way that we put this system on that type of structure is we would create zones across the center of that roof
Okay.
to protect that as well. So, like I said, it's really specific to the structure and to the bird that you're dealing with.
And so you would help if one of the companies that listen to the show, if they said, we have a commercial building, I'm just going to call it XYZ hardware store just to keep it
Sure.
neutral, right? And they said this place has gulls. They could call you up, take pictures of the site, give you measurements, and say, "Hey, the birds are doing this," and you would help them with a plan for that, or so that they could then install that or give a quote to the company for this particular product.
Absolutely. So
Okay,
that's
all
our
right,
standard practice, actually.
all right,
So anytime you have a project or a client has a project, they come to me and I ask them for four things.
okay,
I say, you have to tell me the species of bird you're dealing with.
yeah,
You need an address so that I
okay.
can look it up on Google Earth.
Google Earth, yep,
Uh-huh. Yep.
okay,
I need to
yeah,
see that. I need photos,
photos,
specifically if we're looking under something, in something, something that I can't really see clearly, possibly from
right,
Google Earth.
right,
If there are, venting, HVAC systems, things like that on the roof, I would say send me a couple shots of that.
okay,
And then I say, tell me what the critical areas are. Meaning, if I were there on that structure myself, what would I see? The
okay,
birds are coming from here, the birds are there, they're doing this, they're doing that. And then what I do is I take that information. We have a technical drawings team that I take that back to. I say, look, this is what the address is. I provide them with all that information and
mhm,
they put together a formal layout. But the goal here really is for me to work with these people and train them to basically know what I know. I can
right,
look
right,
at any structure and say, this is where that goes. This is where that doesn't go. Here is the best way to put this on the structure. So what we do is the first several installs, when we're working with new clients, we'll provide those drawings, absolutely no problem. But
mhm,
it's really, part of the learning process. We're going to teach you how to do it, because once I get that drawing back, I call them up and say, look, let's go through this together so I can teach you, this is how that, how to put this on this type of structure, because
mhm.
more than likely you'll run into possibly something like that again.
And what is the smallest bird that the product works with?
Sure. So,
Okay,
like I said, anything that travels during the day,
yeah,
smallest would be probably a sparrow.
okay,
Starlings, we deal with pigeons. Crows, we deal with, you name it, we deal with it. We
okay.
do not deal with owls or bats because, as you know, those
Yeah,
navigate
that's
using echolocation and not the
echolocation.
magnetic sense.
Yeah, okay. So not
Yep.
owls. Yeah, not owls or bats. Okay, got it. So is the purpose of the photos, just to kind of clarify the photos, is that Google Earth obviously is taken in a position in time, and so when you go on Google Earth, you can see when that satellite went overhead. Is the photos, the person would need to be sure that they're taking photos to help fill in what that Google Earth shot couldn't take, or
You got
maybe
it.
there's been a change to the
You
building.
got it.
Do they need to take a measurement of the building, or is that something you would do from the Google Earth side of
Great
things?
question. Yeah,
Okay,
we will typically do measurements if we're looking down on something.
okay,
But when we talk about places that this product belongs,
hmm,
we do a lot of overhangs and things like that. So
yeah,
on an overhang, you
okay,
know that there is probably a somewhat complex beam structure holding that overhang up.
okay,
So for those types of things that I can't see when I'm looking down on it,
right,
that's the thing where I would say, look, I need the measurements of those beams. Tell me
okay,
what that looks like underneath there. Do I have, five horizontal beams and six vertical beams?
hmm,
And what the length of all those beams are, what types of beams they are. I will say we do have guidances on all of this. We have a document that really gets sent to our installers that we're working with that says,
okay,
look, anytime you're looking at this type of project, this is what you look for.
right.
Anytime you're looking for this type of project, this is what you look for. So we have guidance on how to really lay this system out, because quite honestly, it is different than the other traditional methods that are on the market. You do this a little differently.
So the product that you were showing up, and hold it up again, is that the new one? Because when we talked
Yep.
before, that's the new your new system that you've come out with. All
Yep.
right. So why don't we talk a little bit about, so you're getting some, when I spoke to her a
Yep.
couple of months ago, folks, she had an older version. They've come and we were waiting for the new version to come out. So talk about some of the pros and cons of how this version works and how much skill, I guess,
Sure.
is required. Is it easier than traditional, like I'll just use it's a bird wire. Is it
Sure.
something that's what's involved in terms of the install on a
Yeah.
typical parapet type roof?
Sure. So if any of your listeners were at Pest World a couple weeks ago in Denver, we
Hmm.
were there, and that was the release of our brand new system called Pulse.
Pulse. Okay.
It's interesting because like I said, I've been here a little over 2 years, and this is I came on board when we were leaving our Gen 1 device, going to Gen 2.
Hmm.
Then we went to Gen 3, then 3.5, and now we just released Pulse.
Pulse.
It kind of reminds me of the iPhone. You know, every time you turn around, a new iPhone comes out.
Yeah.
But every time we turn around, as we're trying to continue to better the product, and this really is probably the best version that I've seen so far. So, what this one is it has gotten a lot simpler.
Okay.
So, really, what it entails are three components. You have this control hub right here. This
Okay.
is the brains of the system. With the control hub, you're able to power up to 600 linear feet of coverage using this one box.
Okay.
Then it comes with these supports.
Okay.
What these supports do are just what the name it said is to support this wire above the structure. And what this wire does is this wire emits the signal that is deterring the bird. So you can see that I've got a couple different heights here. We have the shortest 2-inch height. This is for those structures that have want to keep it very aesthetically pleasing and they don't want to see their bird control.
Right.
So you have this 2-inch support. You run it along wherever it needs to go. The wire sits in this channel across the top of this, and you go on your merry way. If you need a little more coverage, because the taller up we go, the higher up we go, the stronger the signal becomes.
Ah, okay. All right.
So there are
And how
some,
was that, 4 inches, you said?
yep, this
Four
one's
inches?
4,
Okay.
and then you've got a 6-inch right here.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, so you have three
Yep.
versions. Okay.
So I like to call them Legos because what they do is you really put these together like a Lego. The pieces all fit together and
Hmm.
you build it the way you need it to be built for that specific structure. So if you've got, let's say, the front of the structure where the client doesn't want to see it, put these 2-inch ones on there. If you want to get to the sides and the back, you need to do an HVAC, go to the higher one. And then
Right.
you're able to switch back and forth with those. So, like I said, the higher up you go with the support, the stronger the signal becomes. This is incredibly effective when you deal with those more complex structures. So, when I say a complex structure, I'm talking about a metallic structure, so structural metal, and I'm talking about high pressure situations. So, if
Okay.
you've got a ton of bird pressure there, use
Hmm.
this 6-inch support if you can.
So that would be something, what about things like solar panels? You'd
Yeah,
want to use a 6 inch
sure.
if you could. Okay.
Absolutely. We
Yes.
also, for those, the cool thing about solar panels is that we make this L bracket. So you put
Oh,
this
okay.
L bracket into the base, and then you can basically sit on the outside of the panel. So if you had the side of the panel like this, you could put the L bracket, forgive me, with this side right here,
Yep,
and
yep.
do that and sit off the side of it. So if the panels ever need to be cleaned and things like that, you're able to do that without disrupting the system that's on there.
Okay.
So
Bracket.
that's the great thing about this system with the redo is we wanted to make things incredibly simple.
Yeah.
There were a couple nuances with our old system, which don't get me wrong, I love that system. That's how I got started here in the
Right, right.
business. But there were little things. It was a live wire. It
Okay.
was a 22 gauge stainless steel wire that had 2,500 volts of electricity running through it. So if you touched it, you would get a shock. Now, mind you, everybody, I've touched it.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm still sitting here. So, and
Right.
my hair didn't fry and I didn't end up in the ER. So that's a
It's
plus.
not a building security device, folks.
No, and it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's not like a cattle guard or something like that.
All
But
right.
that stainless steel wire, if it ever got close to anything, you could possibly partially ground the system or even
Okay.
fully ground the system. So
Right.
that made things somewhat complicated when you had maybe like a complex beam structure where you had to go over the beams and things like that.
Hmm.
So we really wanted to fully insulate the system. For me on this one, it because it's fully insulated, you have more consistency in the signal. The other really cool thing is that if this wire were to droop down kind of like this,
Hmm.
you would still have current and signal coming out of it. Even in this lower section right here, if it got closer to the structure, you would see a reduced amount of signal in that center portion. But
Right.
the minute that it was raised back up above the structure, the signal goes back to normal.
Back to normal. Okay.
In our old system, if that wire got close, you could potentially fully ground the system. And that
So,
obviously is
so
not.
the newer version makes it more error proof for the
Yes,
technician if the technician
you got it.
doesn't have, so there's less room for error that from the human side of the error there.
Exactly.
And now I'm assuming it's a plug and play,
Ah,
plug and play. Just
so
fine. They need
this,
to have an outlet. Okay.
yep, you plug this in into your regular
Okay.
120, 110, 120 outlet. And then it has this, so this wire. The other cool thing is that the old system came in a 500 linear foot length, and that was it.
Yeah.
If you needed 100 feet, you had to buy 500. If you needed
Okay.
200 feet, you bought 500. We are now offering this product in 100-foot increments
Oh, all right. Okay.
that can be built on up into that 600-foot, the max coverage that this control hub puts out.
So you always need a new control hub for the next
Over.
600 for
You
over
got it.
600
You
fits.
got
Okay.
it. So the way that these sections come together, so this, like I said, the wire comes in 100-foot lengths.
Hmm.
And if you need to add, so say you get done with the first 100 feet,
Yeah.
you need to add the second. This has it has an IP65 MC4 connector. When I say IP65, I mean this is waterproof and dustproof.
Okay.
So there will be no water ingress into it, and things like that. So for those rainier, more climate, this is a bad choice of words, but more climatey kind of areas. I
Yeah.
live in
Yeah.
Arizona, so I just have heat and sun pretty much year
Yeah.
round. Yeah. So all you do is you finish the first 100-foot section, take the next 100-foot section, clamp these two together, you just click it together and you move on.
Now, is that a separate part that has to be attached, or
Nope.
does it come that way? Oh, it's
Yep,
already
it comes pre-attached. We really,
pre-attached.
when you were talking about making it kind of, this is what I say, it's kind of dummy proof at this point.
Right, right.
It's those three components: the control hub, the supports, and the wire. And really, all you're doing, and what the installers would be doing, is you place the supports, you stick the wire down into the channel, you connect it all together, and you plug the box in, and really, that's it.
So the poles, you can obviously screw them in, or you could use some sort of glue type epoxies, because there's no longitudinal tension. It's not the wire is just trying to be held straight, but it's not like it's under tension of 20 or 30 pounds, is there? Or
Absolutely.
okay.
So the really cool, let me show you what you were getting at. Let me show you the
Yeah,
base of
yeah.
this.
Okay.
If you guys can see this,
Yep.
you
Hold it
see
right
those,
there. That's perfect.
yep, the two screw holes that are right there. Yes, you can screw
Okay.
this in.
Yeah.
And then you see those horizontal slots that are
Right.
above and below that.
Yeah.
What those are used for are zip ties. So if you need to zip
Oh,
tie this
okay.
to
Yeah.
any kind of pipe and things like that, you have the ability to do that. But anytime you do that, please make sure you're using a UV resistant
Right.
zip tie. Use something that's built to last, because like I said, I'm from the sunny state of
Mm.
Arizona,
Yeah.
and things get warm and worn here. So if you use a UV resistant zip tie, you'd be good to go with
And
that.
that would also be places for if you're using an adhesive for it to come up through the
You
product and
got it.
also help hold it
Give
into
it a little
place
bit
as
more
well.
hold. So
Yeah.
yes, so we recommend you can use epoxy on this. And then we have another one that I have right here that has a magnet on it.
Ah, right. The magnet.
The
Okay.
magnet. So this one is by far the simplest to put on the
Yeah.
structure.
Just
Just
yeah.
drop it down. It's got 65 pounds of pull force on it. You really have to yank it up to get it up off the structure.
Right.
You
Very
really, so
nice.
it's on there. I will say this one thing though, for all of you people out there that would, if potentially you ever to use this one day, beware of metal that has a thick powder coat on it. I learned that
Oh,
about a year
right.
and a half ago when we were doing an install at an MLB ballpark in California. and the guy went to go put, our installer went to go put the magnet up on the metal, and it started to come down. They had a couple of coats of powder coated, paint on the metal. And so for that, what they ended up doing is taking a little bit of epoxy, sticking it onto the magnet, and then putting it on like that.
Okay. You need the
Yeah.
little extra
Just a,
security there.
you got it. You got it.
Estimates on length of time. And let's to give you the scenario, let's talk about a clean
Yep.
parapet. There's
Sure.
no walking obstructions. The person isn't working off a ladder. They're working off the roof side. How long does it take to typically install? Well, let's go with 100 foot
Yep.
straight
Straight across.
shot.
You
How
can do
long
it
would
in
that
less
typically?
than 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
It's funny is that, like I said, I spent a week over at Pest World a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
and was talking to so many people across the globe. And I had people that say, they don't want that, which was interesting to me. I didn't expect to hear that's not a good thing, Sarah. I said, all right, well,
That is too fast to
it's too
install.
fast. I said, okay, well,
What?
then you want to make it take double the time, then just take your time putting it down if that's what it is, or take a
I
longer lunch break, whatever works best for you.
That's a little counterintuitive for me. And what was their rationale? They thought that the client would feel they're getting ripped off
You got it.
because they're
You got it.
well then wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I could see that if it was
sure.
really quick, but that also means that you're because labor is often one of the
A
biggest
huge
costs of
expense.
installing a lot of these materials. Uh yeah, that's okay. Well, yeah, then do a really good inspection at the beginning, I guess. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. Or
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the labor component of this.
yeah.
So what I've seen in the last year and a half is I've had a lot of large companies come to me and say, look, we quoted this job. We quoted it with another product.
Hmm.
And I'll just say they quoted it as a netting project.
Sure.
Sure.
Hmm.
We want to see what it would cost to use your product instead of that. We want to compare the costs.
Hmm.
So of course, I oblige. I go and I do a layout. This was back in the
Right.
day. The reason why I learned so much, which I will admit I got in trouble for a little bit, was I was doing my own layouts
Yeah.
instead of using our engineer.
Uh-huh.
Because quite honestly, like I said, I didn't have a background in this, and I wanted to learn as much as I could possibly learn.
Right.
And so that forced me to really understand what the client was asking for, what the
Hmm.
problem was, and for me to figure out exactly where this product went.
Yeah.
So I put together this layout and I come back to them and said, look, this is going to cost you, mind you, I was working in Europe. So this is going to cost you about, let's say, I think it was about $40,000 in equipment their landed cost. There's
Right.
obviously what I charge them, and then they've got customs fees and things like that on top of
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And I said, what did you quote this at to your client? They said $250,000. And I
Yeah.
said, right. And I said, well, how long did you tell them that would take your team? And they said 3 weeks. I said, you guys could do this in 7 days.
Right.
You could do 3 jobs in the course of the time that it would have taken you to do that one.
Yeah.
And the big savings there was that labor component of it.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the thing. The equipment could be the same cost as other,
Hmm.
methods out there. It's
Yeah.
going to be comparable. And sometimes I'll admit it could be more.
Right.
But quite honestly, the big savings on those major, and I'm talking large projects. I'm
Right.
not talking like your average, building. I'm talking large warehouse type, things like, a warehousing center, like a Costco type of thing, like a
Yeah.
building like that.
Right.
And that's where the savings is really on the labor component of it. You don't, if you have to rent a lift, you rent it for less days, which that's obviously cost savings right
That's a
there.
huge savings, right?
It's
Because lifts
huge.
are expensive.
They're
Yeah.
not inexpensive.
Right.
Absolutely. So the savings was there, the labor. And really, the thing that I also want to mention is that because we're using the bird's own internal GPS against it,
Hmm.
the bird will never be able to defeat this system. So what they're being able to do is they're able to give their client a permanent solution. This is the last thing that they would ever need. I can't tell you, Stephen, how many calls and how many emails I got saying, actually from end users Because don't get me wrong, we get those calls a lot too from
Hmm.
people that are researching online. I know obviously the internet is a wealth of information, and people like to do a lot of
Yeah.
digging and looking into things on their own. So I
Hmm.
got many emails and calls from people saying, look, we've spent money on this, it lasted 6 months. We've spent
Right,
money on
right.
this, it lasted 3 months. We did this, it lasted almost a year. Our teams are cleaning repeatedly, so we're spending more money on labor hours, and we're tired of doing this. We want something that's permanent. And with this system, because we're using the bird's own internal GPS against it, the bird will never be able to get past it, and therefore this is a permanent solution.
How long does the box, what you call it,
The control hub.
the control hub,
Yeah,
how long does that last, and how long does that warranty for? And then
sure.
also, how long does the cable last? I would assume if you're in Arizona, that's some pretty heavy sun pressure
Yeah,
to be sure. It's interesting here I'm in Montana, so even though we don't have the sun intensity that you have in Arizona, our elevation often makes up the
absolutely.
difference where we don't feel the heat, but we get the radiation because the thinner atmosphere, obviously.
Right.
So, but what are the warranties on your materials for your products?
Sure. Yeah, so there is a 2-year manufacturer warranty on the product.
Okay.
People ask me all the time, though, how long is it really going to last, Sarah?
Right, right.
Honestly, I told you all earlier that when I came on board, we were leaving Gen 1, moving to Gen 2, then
Hmm.
Gen 3, Gen 3, 5. So I can't really tell you that
Okay.
because I don't have enough historical evidence to be able to tell you that for sure. And also, this product came out 2 weeks ago.
Right,
What
right.
I can tell you, though, is that everything that you saw that I've shown you all is made out of UV resistant, whatever the material is that it's being
Yeah,
made out of. I could tell you everything that it's made out of, but
right.
everything is UV resistant. Everything is IP65 rated. And really, we build these things to last because we know it's going outside, it's going
Right.
on a structure, it's subject to any element like sun, snow, rain, wind, heat, humidity. It's subject to all of those things, but we build it to last.
Okay.
They do have the ability to purchase extended warranties. We offer extended warranties of anywhere from 1 to 3 years additional. And so for that, you do have the ability to do 5 total years of coverage.
Hmm. Okay.
Something else I want to point out, because I'm sure some of your listeners would want to know this. I know that I talked about how simple this is.
Right.
And I know for probably some of them, if they're in the pest control industry, they want to know, well, okay, that's great, but where is the chance for recurring revenue and how do I maintain these units?
Okay.
The really cool thing about it is that it doesn't need a whole lot of maintenance. It really doesn't, but don't tell your clients that.
Okay.
Don't tell them that whatsoever. Work in a service plan. And if you have to go out there, I mean, I think once a month is a little overkill, but if you
Yeah.
want to, go for it. It gets you a chance to get in front of the client and see if there's anything else you can do to help them. But really, it's go in quarterly, go in biannually. We make a signal detector, and I'm sorry I don't have it here with me. It looks like a tiny little remote. You hit the button on it, put it up to the line, press the button, and as you back your arm up, it'll beep. When that beep stops, you know that the signal has now stopped. We give you guidelines on what the signal ranges should be based upon the type of substrate you're going on, because that varies. If you're on metal, it's this. If you're on wood, it's that. Plus, obviously, you have these different heights of the
Different heights.
supports, and so that changes as well.
Yeah.
So really, it's a very simple go in, use the detector, and
So different surfaces would absorb or reflect
you
the
got it.
electromagnetic wave
You
in
got it.
different ways. So,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. And metal is the biggest culprit for that.
All right.
You will see the strongest signal on wood, and
Really? That's
yeah,
counterintuitive to me. Okay.
I
So
know,
wood
right?
has the
So
strong,
wood, brick, that type of thing. Sometimes
interesting.
concrete, you'll get in the middle because sometimes there's, obviously, steel and things like that underneath it. But it's funny that you say that. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of
Yeah.
money and a lot of
Right.
effort on our R&D and really just capturing data. We wanted to see really how this worked on different types of structures, different types of birds and things like that, so that we could say what we say, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we learned a lot over the last year in terms of how the product behaves in different areas.
is your company, a lot of companies that are involved in the bird control space will have a training program for
Yeah,
quote to give someone a certification
you
to
got
be
it.
that. Is your company developing that or has it developed that yet?
Yeah. So we do have certified installers across the globe.
Okay.
And really, what that entails is I need to see that you've had anywhere from 3 to 5 successful installs where you're
Okay.
happy and the client's happy, without a whole ton of troubleshooting. I think
Hmm.
this system, our new Pulse system, will make that a whole lot simpler. There were some
Okay.
times, like you said, user or installer error. And it wasn't really that. It's just you had to know these little intricacies that you
Right.
had to watch out for. And so the first time, people aren't always going to know that. So we do have a training program. We do work with our clients. I'm actually very particular about those kind of things. I want to make sure that everyone has a great experience. Don't get me wrong, things will happen occasionally,
Right.
but I want to make sure that and ensure that there is a good experience for the installer plus then their client. And so yeah, we've worked hard on that. The certified program, like I said, takes about 3 to 5 installs, and it's really the actual. I have a couple people that vice presidents of sales that work in different regions. So really, they'll work with the client, then they'll come back to me, and then we'll make that final decision. Then we'll give you a seal that says you're a certified
Oh, all
Symterra
right.
Pulse
Okay.
installer, and
Yeah.
then we go from there.
Gotcha. Okay. And is there, if someone, for whatever reason, I mean, people are different for whatever reason, if they said, look, I have a client, I think this system would work, I don't want to do the work. Is there a way for them to pass that on to you and then get a commission for finding that job and your company finds a suitable installer for that for whatever reason? Or is that something that's not within your company right now?
Yeah, we don't really do that right
Okay.
now.
Hmm.
I will say I do have people that I have go-to people kind of placed around strategically placed around the globe.
Hmm.
That if someone needed help, I will say this: I could say, hey, look, do you want someone to come in and help you and train you?
Okay. There you go.
We can
All
do
right.
that. I have people that will. I had a project recently that just got passed from one installer to another, and they worked something out. I'll be honest, I don't really like to get involved in those kind of
Yeah.
things, and neither
Okay.
does our company.
So
So
you'd help them
I'll connect
put them in touch with someone and they can work out their own contractual
you.
arrangement. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
I'll be the
So
connector. I'm happy to do that. But
sure.
beyond that, I think that's on
Yeah.
them.
Okay. Well, fair enough. And
So,
is there, go ahead. No, go ahead.
oh, sorry. So I want to talk about one more thing.
Sure.
Quite honestly, when I look at this, like I said earlier, we're mixing a little bit of science and a little bit of technology together.
Hmm. Right.
We are very fortunate to have the University of Arizona here in our backyard. Go Cats, by the way, go Wildcats. If you're a basketball fan or a football fan, I'm a diehard basketball fan, by the way, just for
All right.
anybody who cares.
Okay.
So with that, we're very fortunate to have, like I said, them in our backyard. And we have worked with their Department of Agriculture and Life Sciences. We've got a 2-part study that they did in conjunction with Oregon State University that shows the effectiveness of the product. We also have documentation from the department head of that department stating that the product is 100% humane. So for those organizations out there that maybe some of the listeners work with that really care about, hey, we want to use something sustainable, we want to use something that's humane, we do have documentation that we can show, hey, this is 100% humane, and we're backed by a major university. They are ranked the #2 entomology program in the world. Not like that has to do with birds, but
Right.
it's all still in the same realm. Well, I
Hmm.
consider it all in the same realm.
Right.
So we do have that that we can provide. It's actually on our website. Again, Stephen brought it up. It's www.gosymterra.com. And also, if you're wondering where the Symterra name came from, many of you may remember the name Flock Off. So that is our
Oh,
previous name. We were known as Flock Off from the beginning of the company until about July of this year. Quite honestly, that name was really funny and very interesting. People did not forget that name. I've
no.
been to so many conferences that I'll admit where people were like, "Hey, Flock Off people."
Okay.
Um,
So why did you change it? Because it seemed to me to encapsulate
Yep.
I mean, and you got a little edgy there, of course, with a
Uh,
particular
yep.
creative word that's used
Uh-huh.
sometimes, colorful word that's used in the English language,
Colorful.
colorful word that's used, but it did get the point right across because when I hear the word Symterra, I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Where does that come from?
Yeah,
Yep.
so
So
I don't know what that is.
lockoff was a good start for us. It
Okay,
was, but it was time to grow up. It
all
really
right,
was.
okay.
I'll admit, with the advent and creation of this baby,
Hmm.
it was really time to grow up. We really want to be doing things in a different way. And Symterra means Sym for symbiotic, and Terra
Symbiotic.
meaning earth. So
Okay,
really, we really want to push the idea and mission and theory of all of us here on this earth, between the advancement in our cities and our states and buildings and things like that, and people and animals and birds, and that we can all live here all happily. We just don't want the birds, obviously, where we are.
where
So
we
we
don't
want to
want them.
make we don't want them. We want them. We want them to go back to their home, like their trees and things like that. So, yeah, that's
If
where that came from.
if someone had a contract with an airport,
Oh, good
because there's a lot of
question.
electronic material, a
Yeah.
lot of waves going around, is there anything about this particular system that would interfere with the radar and equipment at an airport? Like I'm thinking of a international airport
Yeah.
where there's a lot of electronic material flying around. I mean,
That's
waves
a
flying around.
That's a great question.
Okay,
And the answer is no.
okay,
Because we are an electronic device that emits a signal, you can imagine we are subject to many different
all right,
certifications across the globe. Primarily for the United States, it's the FCC. We do have FCC certification. And the reason we can get that is because we operate at such a low frequency. I have a chart that shows where our standard kind of household items and
hmm,
thing and beyond fall within the frequency chart.
okay,
So if you look at us, where the Symterra pulse system is, we're far on the left at that smaller range.
okay,
Your cell phone emits, I can't even tell you, but
yeah,
a lot more than this system actually does. So that's how we are able to obtain our FCC. You
hmm,
brought up airports.
yeah,
That has been a hot topic recently, for us. We've been contacted by many different organizations, different airports. And I can tell you, we are located in many across the globe. So you'll see us at LaGuardia, you'll see us at LAX, you'll see us at Heathrow, Jacksonville. We're going into Indianapolis. We've got an airport going in Jordan, one in El Salvador. So that has been
the
a
country of
really,
Jordan,
really, yeah,
the Kingdom of Jordan. Yep,
yep, the
okay,
Kingdom of Jordan.
okay,
Yes, yes, yes. So um, this has been something that is really, really great for hangers. But
hmm,
something you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast was, I'm going to tell you about places where this product goes, and I'm going to tell you where this product probably shouldn't go.
okay,
Hangers in the beginning made me nervous because if you think about a hangar door,
right,
it is wide enough to get some of them are wide enough to get a commercial or two commercial aircrafts through that opening.
right.
There is a signal that obviously comes out of this wire. That signal is definitely not far enough to come
Right, to go
across that
across that far.
opening. Although we get projects, we do a ton of industrial doors, like in your warehouse doors and things like that. So for those types of areas, I will always recommend don't do the opening of those hangers. Plus, the way that the doors fold in, they fold in kind of on top of each other, and you can't really have a system without damaging the system on those doors.
Okay,
So with this system, we do a lot inside the hangar. So in the beams, in the structure, wherever it needs to go up in the top of the structure, or however, wherever the problem, quote unquote, problem is located.
yeah. So you're keeping
So
the birds from loafing on those internal
you
beams.
got it.
So let me ask a follow, because yeah, obviously the door would, if you're trying to just treat the door as a way of a barrier to keep the doors. Well, what about could you string a cord across the top and then hang wires down that something could still push through, but it's not but would the wave be enough to keep a bird from flying into the building and you just space your cables, dangling cables? Is that just not scientifically possible or
I mean, it is. You could
okay,
do that, but I think that would be frowned upon by, the planes that are coming through there,
sure,
because more
could
than
be.
likely they would hit the system coming down. Now, mind you, you think about when you pull into a car wash.
Yeah.
What happens? You've got all of those, all
Right.
of the
Right.
whatever they're called, the chamois or towels or
Hmm.
whatever that are hanging down,
Right.
and you drive right through it. That would make me nervous, quite honestly. I wouldn't recommend doing that. But I will
Yeah.
say this: we did a hangar where they, and I can't tell you the name of the hangar. It's a private hangar where we did the track, and
Okay.
the track is wide enough where the door was sitting on the front, and the track had sparrows that were getting up into the track. So we did the back side of the track,
Hmm.
and we're able to get those birds out of there.
Right.
When we were talking about, going inside the structure, really the way that I look at this is that I can't stop them from coming inside. That opening is way too big. But
Yeah.
what I can do is take away all the landing spots that they like to land in, which would eventually force them to go find another area. They come in, they're like, hey, I can't go there. I can't go there. I can't go there. Well, I'm going to go find somewhere else where I actually can go. So those types of things take a little bit longer. You have to have a little bit more patience because the bird has to figure out that they can't go where they usually go. When we talk about other areas where I wouldn't recommend putting this product, are open areas. So we've had a lot of emails and things like that for vineyards. Can you protect my vines on my vineyard? Well, not really. I guess you could put these supports on top of each one of the posts that the vine is on and then run it across. We've never tried that. I don't love the open area concept there. Like people have asked, can you protect my farmland?
Yeah.
No, like this really is built for a structure. What kind of structure? It doesn't matter. If you want to do a building, an overhang, pipes, trusses, you name it, we can do that. But just really, I like to steer clear from those really open areas, quite honestly, because the signal just, it doesn't penetrate that far out. I mean, you can get anywhere from a foot to potentially 10 feet of signal in those open areas. You'd have to be, yeah, it's not ideal.
Sure. And now,
Yeah.
is it possible to up I guess for lack of, I'm not an electrician, so I'm
Yeah.
just the voltage to get a
Yeah.
wider umbrella
Sure.
zone of control around it? Let's say I'm just looking at the vineyard situation. So so rather than having, 110 current, if someone went up to a 220 current, would you have a larger, it may be a thicker wire, and because obviously you wouldn't want to set the wire on fire,
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
right? So could you get a wider spread of control area possibly? Because that's the vineyard market's a huge
I
market.
know. I
I mean,
know.
it would be like, I'm thinking, boy, that would be, you're thinking of things like sunflowers. They get
Oh, yeah.
hammered
Oh,
significantly
yeah.
and they would be at a price point where they probably could afford putting poles out in the field, and you just simply, because they only have pressure at certain times of the year. They
Of
could
course.
roll out the wire, hook it up. That wouldn't be a big deal because right now some of them are looking at large netting systems, which are
Oh, that's of course.
it's a pain. Yeah.
So
Just
if
throwing out.
any of your listeners out there want have a project like that and want to let us test
Okay.
it, I'd be
All right.
more than happy to test it. But going back to what you were saying is if we could amplify, we can't, because
You
if
can't.
we do that, I have a feeling that that would maybe make us so that we're not eligible for our FCC certification. If we
Right.
mess with the frequency, we mess with any of those things, we are at a sweet spot, like I said, where we
Yeah.
have all of these certifications, and I don't want to mess with that quite yet.
Right. Well, it just gives something out there. I
Yeah,
mean, we have, I find that wildlife control operators are kind of
I agree.
a creative bunch, and so you never know. Maybe it would be another element because there is a huge need in that agricultural
I
space,
agree.
especially for something that is not as tedious as rolling up netting across large areas. So
Yeah,
fascinating. The so what is the cost of the system? Excuse
sure.
me, if someone bought, I know you had it, you now are modular, so you have it in 100-foot lengths. When we originally talked, you gave me a price for both the device and the 600-foot level. So give us a price for whatever your basic package would be as you describe
Sure.
it. Yep.
So, like I said, it is sold in 100-foot increments.
Hmm.
So you'd be looking at the 100 foot would be you're looking at basically $2,900 to about $3,900. And that actually is a special price that is for the pest control and wildlife control world. The MSRP on it is a little bit higher than that. You'd be looking at the MSRP is anywhere from about 3,500 to about 4,600, almost $4,700. So we love our wildlife and pest control partners that we have out there. So we know that they have to sell it to their clients and want to make money as well.
Sure.
So we do a
And then
discount
and
for
then there
those
would be
partners.
shipping on
Correct.
top of that.
Yep.
And that price covers the consultation that they would need to do with your personnel to make sure that they have the right system and installing it properly for the site that they work with you on.
Yep, we only
Okay.
charge, we don't charge for any of that. We just, if
Okay.
you want to buy a system, that's really what the cost is. And the difference
Gotcha.
between the cost really is you've got your standard system, which is this, it doesn't have the
Mhm.
magnet on it. And
Right.
then you've got the one that has the magnet, and that
Sure.
one is a little more
That'd be a little
costly just
extra,
because
right?
it added the cost with the magnet. So
Absolutely.
you're looking anywhere from, like I said, 2,900 up to 3,900. And that's 100 feet up to 600 feet. And that highest mark, that 600 feet, is with the magnet at the 3,600 or I'm sorry, 3,900 mark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good magnet. Okay. Good magnet. All
So
right.
really, the price has decreased since our previous system. We really wanted to be able to offer different options. Like I said
Mhm.
earlier, it was 500 feet and that was it. So with this, they get an extra 100 linear feet of coverage and a better price point and the option to be flexible. If you need 100, you buy 100. If you need 200, you buy 200. We wanted to make it simple in terms of that and also in terms of that install, obviously with the three components, and that's really all you need.
And how did things go at Pest World? So Denver's
Yeah,
a pretty big hub for a lot of travelers. I would suspect it was pretty large gathering. Did you find a lot of positive interaction with the people that showed up there?
I did. I saw a lot of the international crowd.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it
I
is
got to, yeah,
international airport. Yeah.
I got to see a lot of clients that I work with overseas,
Hmm.
internationally, which always is fun because obviously I do a lot of this, back and forth over Zoom. So it was busy. It really was. And I will say, I think the resort that it was at helped a lot. You kind of were a captive audience because
Yeah.
that resort is about 25 minutes outside of Denver.
Oh, okay.
And so, to really go anywhere, you had to get in an Uber and go
Go
somewhere. And so
somewhere.
it was great to connect with a lot of people. We met so many new people. We saw a bunch of people we hadn't seen in a while. But I will say this, something that I've learned over my tenure here, which is not that long, obviously, a little over
Hmm.
2 years, but something that I've learned about the pest control industry is that, and mind you, this is my opinion, but maybe you'll agree with this, is that I feel like the way that pest control is being done is the same way our parents did it and that their parents before them and their parents before them, and there hasn't really been a lot of innovation. I think now we're starting to see those types of things with like the smart monitoring and even in bird control, the advent of lasers and things like that. And then obviously with our unique system. But the consensus at the show, and I heard this from so many people, was that they didn't see a whole lot of new things.
Right.
So I don't know what's really going on with the pest control industry and the wildlife industry, but I really, really think that it's time to start seeing some new things and new ways of doing this. I mean, like I said earlier, you see regulations changing and you see, things like that. And I feel like that may be the catalyst to push us into, hey, you've got to do these things. You don't have a choice at this point.
That regulation certainly could be, whether that's regulation from the company policy side of
Of
things
course.
or from the governmental side. I do think when I looked at the industry, because the wildlife control field is a conservative, and I don't necessarily mean that in a political sense. I'm
Of course.
conservative in the sense they're loath to change from something that they know works, partly because of how much the learning curve. Think of it like a
Got
farmer.
it.
Once he's in a system and he knows how to grow a crop, it takes a lot of training and patience for them to feel comfortable with something new because the downside, the risk is so great if it fails.
Yeah,
And so I think that's part of the problem. So my advice typically for manufacturers, for whatever it's worth, is you have to reach that 5 year
I agree.
threshold so that people that you have enough time in the field, but also you need to identify some key industry leaders, and that's what I would advise you to do. Is if you could get some of the bigger companies out there to say, we've used this product, it's worked for us, and now you have that imprimatur
You
from
got it.
that company, especially like the fact you mentioned some of these airports where you've used it. So if I ever get to some of those airports, I may be taking a closer look at some of
Yeah.
the structures. I'm always trying to
Oh yeah.
eyeball the wildlife side of things.
Uh-huh.
But now I'm going to look for, oh, well, I can now see
I
it
can
and
see
see
it.
it in use. And that's going to help give people that level of comfort because it's the challenge of being new. And they're like, because I'm always skeptical because there's so many things being sold and I'm like, it doesn't work. I
Uh-huh.
just
Yep.
think of I'm just using myself here. Ultrasound for a lot of things. It's like, yeah, people are using it, and we hear reports from guys who are like, oh yeah, I trapped raccoons, and they had one of those ultrasound things sound firing off right next to the trap, right? So clearly,
Of course.
a lot of these products don't work. So that's part of what you're struggling up against with that. And so there's always going to be that level of suspicion. But if you hang in there and you get that series of successes, then you'll get to a tipping point, and then to be like you'll be part of that landscape where people are going to adopt that particular type training. So
I
that
agree.
material. So it's yeah. Anything that we haven't talked about that we want to make sure that you're
Yeah.
or re-emphasize for our viewers to learn more about, or something you want to make sure that they have in their head before we end
Yeah.
this particular time together.
I think I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what you were just saying because you're right.
Hmm.
I think that's the hard part, but I think we as humans get into our routines and
Oh,
things like that.
absolutely, we do.
You
Oh,
know,
sure.
we get into
Yeah.
our routines, and so to change that after you've done it a certain way for so long is
Yep.
difficult, and I
It
know
is.
that, and we recognize that.
Yep. It
And I
is.
think with the advent of all the upgrades that we made to the
Hmm.
system to make it kind of dummy proof at this point,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that any because nobody in this industry are dummies. I'm
Yeah.
just saying it makes it so much simpler that I think that was something that kind of scared people because,
Sure.
hey, you got to do it differently. This is different. You have to make sure that the wire is wrapped this way, and you have to do this over there, and you have to do this. And that's a lot of effort when somebody can just say, hey, I've done this a million times. I know how to do it. I could
Right.
do it with my eyes closed. So, yes, we were up against that. And now, and what you were talking about with having other larger people that have worked with us, we work with the largest pest control companies in the world. We work with the smallest pest control companies in the
Yeah.
world. We work with really everyone. And really, what I'd like to see moving forward is that with this system, as more people pick it up, and I think as more people pick it up and start to use it, they'll see, hey, that really was simple, and it really isn't something to be scared of. And I see the benefit in this and that and this and that. So, for anything that I wanted to mention, I think really primarily is that this is 100% humane.
Mhm.
And it's simple to install. There is a chance for recurring revenue. Bill your client, do a service
Yeah.
plan. I mean, I think that's a big thing for our pest control and wildlife control, technicians and installers out there. They don't want to just do it and be done. Then again, I do have people that want to just do it and be
Yeah.
done at the
Right.
same time, but most people want that recurring revenue. So there is the chance for that. And really the great thing is that this is a permanent solution. Like you said, and like I've heard so many times, is that there are products out there that work for a small period of time, maybe a little bit longer period of time, but permanently may not work permanently. And I'm
Right.
also a believer, like I said, is throw the kitchen sink at it if you have to. There are solutions that are right for specific areas. I mean, like I said, this goes on a structure. You put it on a roof, an overhang, whatever you want to do that is an actual structure. It's going to work really, really well, and it'll be simple to install. So I'm
Right.
pleased with what we've done with this. It's been a lot in the making, a long time in the making. And we got some great reviews. When we were at Pest World, people were like, that's so cool. We're so glad that you did this. People that knew us before, that have worked with us before, that may have had a couple of challenges. They're like, we can't wait to use this product. And I'm really pleased with what I've seen in terms of the signal range and the consistency of how it works.
Yeah, well, I'm always glad new tools are coming into the market because, this isn't technology where things are changing every 5 years, where it's a different world. Like we were
Ah,
talking about the iPhone, right? But in terms of
every time you
the
turn
wild,
around.
the wildlife control field moves a lot slower. But I'll tell you, in the last 25 years, there's been a bunch of changes. A lot of them are, incrementalism. You're absolutely right. There
Sure.
hasn't been things that revolutionize, but typically it's been on simplification of installation, specialization of tools so you can do things faster because labor is such
And
an
better.
expensive
Yep.
aspect. So, uh, well, thank you so much for coming. You've been listening to Sara Larson. She is the Senior Vice President of Sales of Symterra. You can learn more about this particular product for getting birds off of buildings at gosymterra.com. Gosymterra.com. That's with two R's.
Yep.
Two
Symterra. And if you
A.
have questions, direct questions, you can email us at hello
Okay.
at gosymterra.com. And again, it's
At,
GOSYMTERRA.
at,
And more than likely, you'll get me or somebody
okay.
on
Hello.
the end
All
of that
right.
email. Yep. Hello at gosymterra.com.
Yes, and it uses electromagnetic waves to keep birds and interferes with their navigation to keep them off of structures. So definitely a different mode of action from the traditional spikes and barriers or using toxicants or frightening products to keep birds off of structures. So check it out. We're really glad that you came and
Thank
spoke with
you.
us today. And hopefully, if you have some new things that come out out in your product or you move into another area, definitely reach out again for an update. We'd like to follow up again to see how things are going with your company.
Will do. Thanks so much. I appreciate being here. And it was great to be a guest.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. You've been listening to Living the Wildlife as part of the Pesky podcast family. Go check out gosymterra.com if you look into bird work. And if not, put it in your cell phone because you may want to be sure you are considering that as an option if you're dealing with structural bird control that you need to handle. So, and who knows, maybe we'll get something in the agricultural field as well. So this is
Maybe.
Living the Wildlife. We're part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Well, because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast with Living the Wildlife Podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here.